Good morning, everybody. Today is Sunday, March 5th, 2023. You are watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. I'm Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Steve Hunt. And I can't believe you're saying the word March. My God.
It's March, Steve, and you know what that is? It's a month of madness. Madness, I tell you. And you know what? I understand that this is intimidating. Me putting my big fat mug in the screen so that it fills up screen. It's apparently intimidating. Are you intimidated?
I am not. In the words of Bernie Mac, I ain't scared of you, mother.
Anyway, it's the Howard County Council, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, Steve, that was not my pithy question of the day. Our pithy question of the day is, how are you feeling? And in the New York Times and Washington Post today, there are articles about the dissolution of the marriage, the official announcement of dissolution of the marriage of George and Kellyanne Conway. Steve, your thoughts. I know you bought them a lovely sugar dish at the occasion of their nuptials back in 2001.
Yeah, and I want my shit back.
As well, you should.
Because I don't want either one of them to get it in the divorce. So, just send it back to my undisclosed location in southeastern Howard County, and we're all good. So, no, this was a I guess my only comment is I'm surprised it took this long, because we've seen plenty of power couples, even opposing ones. I believe was it Carville and on the Democrat side, what was he married to Mary Madeline? Yeah, I mean they would go on shows together and exchange barbs. There's John Avalon and Margaret Hoover. So you've had those couples who are clearly on opposing sides politically, and they exchange good-natured barbs. And Madeline and Carville were hysterical. If anybody's ever seen them on a show together, and every once in a while Hoover and Avalon will be on CNN, and they're more cute than hysterical. Carville's a nut anyway, but the level of viciousness, especially from the George Conway side, I mean, he was downright. I mean, there were times he would write stuff, and I'm like, "How are you going home tonight, bro? Or are you even going home tonight?" Because he went next level. So I'm surprised it survived the Trump presidency, quite frankly. Then there was a whole thing with their daughter, and maybe joining forces as parents to get people off of her back. But then there was a whole mom wanted to shut the daughter down from posting, and it was a mess. And so again, what took you so long, guys? Because I think we all saw the reality for what it was.
Yeah, more of the same. I mean, there was no good-natured banter there, was there?
No.
I mean, George started as a Trump supporter, and then that lasted about 6 months. And, in one of the articles today, Kellyanne is talking about how she felt like all of George's attacking the White House was a violation of their marital vows. And I'm not going to say I completely disagree with her. I mean, I actually do see her point. But I will say I'm not sorry. I mean, one of their kids, one of their daughters was very much acting out on social media the entire term of the Trump presidency, and while mom and dad were fighting. So that's not a good look. But I am sorry for her family. I mean, having been a product of divorced parents, and then also having gone through a divorce myself. I mean, it's not easy on anybody involved. So sorry for them, but at the same time, there just seemed to be a sharpness there and a lack of comedy that I don't understand. Little known fun fact, Steve. Margaret Hoover and John Avalon both follow me on Instagram.
Oh, nice.
I don't know how that happened.
Nice.
But they both do, which probably should mean that I should get my butt on Instagram more.
Yeah, if you got them out there, sure.
Yeah, right. That would be a good idea. That would be an asset.
Well, Avalon's written a lot of books, so maybe when your book comes out, you can start posting stuff there, and maybe Avalon will give it a read.
Maybe I should just start moving my ass onto Instagram now.
You never know.
Steve, top of the show. This bombshell dropped about 90 minutes before recording time. Former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan has issued a statement in which he says that while he is committed to the Republican Party, while he is committed with moving the Republican Party past Donald Trump, that while he is committed to showing that to all of America that the Republican Party is truly the party of working people, that he will not stand as a candidate for president in 2024 due to, and this is not an uncommon reason, the impact that another campaign will have on his family. Steve, I believe you have read the statement. No, again, this is late breaking news. It's not entirely surprising news, but I'm interested in your reaction.
Well, first of all, I was waiting for him to announce he was running to insert my Hello Larry jokes from those who remember the old McLean Stevenson sitcom. Still can't believe he left MASH for that shit.
Again, we show our age.
Again, we show our age. But his statement, I think the most important and the part that really lands true in that statement was he didn't want to be a part of what he called a multi-car pileup. Those were his words. That would lead to Donald Trump getting the nomination, and I think that's the whole truckload. I think that he did his tour around the country. He was on Sunday shows every Sunday for God knows how long, and I think what he saw was he had a ceiling that was sub 5% of voters in the primary, and the big fear amongst a lot of Republicans is that enough people will get in that Donald Trump will get the nomination like he did last time with about 35-40% of the vote because there were so many other candidates until it got to be too late in 2016. So I think Hogan saw reality for what it was. He knew he wasn't going to win. Hell, Hogan probably wasn't even going to win the Maryland primary, much less the whole truckload. And I can get into the mechanics of the Republican primary. It's winner take all in every state. So there's no splitting up of the delegates. So yeah, I think he saw reality for what it was. My question to the former, you're right, funny to say that, governor is, where do you go from here? Who you got? Because, and this is the thing I ask all Republicans, you don't want Trump, but what about Trumpism? And if you look at the current field or the potential field, you've got DeSantis. Somebody tell me, besides his fake Southern accent, seeing as that he went to Yale or wherever the hell he went, another one of these Ivy League Republicans that suddenly, overdosed on Mayberry RFD. Again, showing my age. Wow. But
knowing that you may be older than you actually are.
Hey, I only watched those in reruns as a kid. I did not watch them first run. But you've got DeSantis, who's Trump with a twang, and then you've got either people who are Trump sycophants who either stood silent while Trump did his Trump thing, like Haley and Pompeo, or people who stood by his side goo-goo-eyed, yes, Mike Pence, I'm talking to you, while Trump pulled all his crap. So, he talked about moving on from Donald Trump. Are you really? With this group? Which one represents moving on from Trump? I want one of them to answer me one question. How is your presidency if you win? How would that be different from Trump? What would you do that he didn't do? What did he do that you wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole? Show me the difference. I'm not seeing it.
Well, I think we're going to go there in a few minutes as we go to our next topic, which is talking about these GOP and conservative events. Right. Mm-hmm. The CPAC is in National Harbor, and there's another event competing. And I think that may be a better time to talk about this whole field right now, because there also is some very current info on all of that stuff. But talking about Hogan, mm-hmm. Paul Begala wrote a very interesting article for Third Way,
I read that this morning. Yes.
in which, well, you are well studied today, sir, as am I. This could be a good podcast, a better than good podcast. It could be great.
Yep.
But his point is, the no labels theory, which is the group that Hogan and Joe Manchin nominally lead.
Right.
That their concept of having a fusion candidacy for president will never be anything more than a spoiler. They have an almost 100% chance of getting 0 electoral votes, but they will take voters away from one or two or the other of the major party candidates. And Begala makes the case, and I tend to agree with Begala, that it will probably benefit a Trump or Trump-like candidate who I still think will be the nominee of the GOP. So, so where does that leave this no labels movement on a national standpoint?
Right.
Who knows? Where does it leave Larry Hogan from a continual? Oh my God, I went max headroom there.
I was going to say, I saw a thing there.
Yeah, what is going on? I'm still frozen, but I think you can hear me.
We can still hear you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm just going to go with that, and that is always not a flattering look. I look like James Howard. Anyway, where does that leave? Where does that leave? Oh, there you go. Where does that leave Larry Hogan personally and politically? The curiosity is he going to run for Maryland Senate?
Right.
Very strong speculation that Ben Cardin is going to retire. That's going to set forth a Donnybrook on the Democratic side. There's going to be several prominent Democrats who are going to take a shot at that, especially because it's a free shot for current state office holders. There I go again, Steve. Damn it. Don't know what's going on. But anyway, for Hogan, what other Republicans are going to run? Michael Peroutka, Dan Cox. He has such a free path to that, and or such an clear path to that. He would be a formidable candidate, and he could certainly paint any Democratic nominee as an out of touch liberal. And one has to wonder if Senate 2024 isn't in Hogan's plans. And wham, I thought they couldn't do an uglier picture of me once I froze, but they found a way. Thank you, Zoom.
Yeah. I will say this, Bill, while you're working through that. I think you're absolutely right about Senate 24 for Larry Hogan. I think that you've got two scenarios working. Ben Cardin runs for re-election, and Hogan spends the next few years, touring the country and going on talk shows and prepping for something possibly in 28. I think if Ben Cardin retires, and oh, by the way, I think if Cardin doesn't retire on the Republican side, you'll just get your typical clown car. I think if Cardin retires, I think Hogan jumps in quick and hopes to clear the deck. He'll have plenty of money to do it. He's got plenty of name rec, obviously, to do it. So I think that, to your point, Bill, 2024 Senate, if Ben Cardin decides not to run again, I personally would be shocked, especially in light of this announcement this morning. I'd be shocked if Larry Hogan didn't jump in and see this as a golden opportunity with Democrats. I mean, we probably know a lot. We probably have a lot of the same names in mind. I don't know that Larry Hogan would look at any of those names and say, "Nah, I can't do anything with that guy." So, yeah, I'm with you on the Senate 24 thought.
Yeah, I apologize. I changed cameras and I still got the jumping and blipping. So you're gonna have to look at my fat, big-haired face at the chrysalis for the rest of the show. So yeah, I would be shocked. I mean, I think Larry Hogan knows his limits. Yeah. And let's face it. I mean, for a number of reasons, he can't be president. I hate to sound this way, but he doesn't look like a president. He doesn't act like a president. Of course, one could say neither could Trump, but Trump had amazing resources, probably the strongest, one of the strongest marketing backgrounds of any recent presidential candidate. And he could muster the resources to do that kind of door-to-door Cambridge Analytica retail campaigning, extremely micro-targeted, that now the Democrats are just catching up to now. Hogan doesn't have that.
Right.
And fortune does not favor moderates in general in politics. So unless if you're Bill Clinton, and Larry Hogan ain't Bill Clinton. So I think Hogan knows who he is. I think he knows where his lane is. And I think he feels his lane is Maryland. Now, whether or not he runs for Senate, I would dare say he has a duty to run for Senate, because if he doesn't, it's going to guarantee that that seat staying in Democratic hands. But it's going to be all or nothing for him, because let's face it, Larry Hogan has never had long coattails in this state. And if he doesn't win Senate, his political viability is doomed. And that may also be with having a voice on the national stage. So, one could see it the other way. He could decide not to run, because not to run and still have a national voice is better than losing. Better than losing a Senate race.
The problem there is distance and time is not your friend. I mean, look at Chris Christie, who you could say was similar to Larry Hogan in profile. Obviously, he ran for president, but where has he been, 7 years later? So I don't know if it's that easy, especially Hogan as a moderate. He can't be a Fox News guy and, throw flames with the rest of that group. So I think you're right. I think a Senate run in 24 and a win actually sets him up well to maybe run for president in 28. But you're right. It is definitely a risk, because if he loses, he's done. But if he doesn't run at all and it's sitting out there for him, I don't know how good that is for him long term either. So he's in an interesting spot as a ex-governor with a lot of space between the next time he can get back in the game.
Larry Hogan and Wes Moore, both on the presidential ballot in 2028, Steve. Imagine.
Crab cakes and presidential primary runs. That's what we do.
Yeah. Let's talk about that bigger Republican field. And I think there's even a little Democratic tidbit to throw in there. But, issue 2 is DeSantis ascendant. So Ron DeSantis came out with his book. I read the review of it in the, what is it called? The Courage to Change, I believe it is.
I don't know.
There's so little chance I'm going to actually read this book. I mean, I just have no interest. But it is. I read the review of it in the Washington Post. It is apparently a very interestingly written screed, insofar as it's very much an appeal to the working class Trump voters, and it attacks. DeSantis attacks what he calls many times in this book elites, which we as Democrats think of as academics, scientists, professional, members of the civil service, and others with actual expertise and experience. But I think that could be construed in another way too, which is that there are elites in the Republican Party. And let's face it, Donald Trump may have it all built on debt and bankruptcies, but he's still got gold fixtures in Trump Tower. And the contrast, in the New York Times today, there's talk about CPAC, the other Republican, the Club for Growth, I think it is.
Yeah, that was the other function this weekend. Yeah,
this weekend. And they're talking about that the Trump campaign is realizing that it has some tougher going this time. They're already working on delegate candidates. They're already working on field ops, and they are taking nothing for granted, and they are concerned about probably first and foremost the candidacy of Ron DeSantis, but they're also making sure that they have things proactively in place so that none of these other candidates, announced or non-announced, Nikki Haley, Pompeo, Mike Pence, the one, Kristi Noem, the ones who you mentioned and more, that nobody catches fire. So, Steve, the jostling and jockeying is well underway in the Republican Party. Your thoughts?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, Bill, and I did
There
not read
often is.
There often is, yes. I did not read the review, but what I did read was a couple of blurbs about DeSantis's book, and apparently in his 12-page opening, forward or first chapter, or whatever you want to call the thing, he uses the term woke 20 times. So, he's certainly staying true to his, culture warrior mentality. As you said, he talks about the elites. And there's an irony there, because when you want to talk about the elites, besides his own educational background that I talked about earlier, DeSantis did not go to CPAC, which, clearly was, Trump world. And it was all things MAGA, but he didn't even bother to go. Whereas Nikki Haley at least went, and made a speech, a couple of days ago. He went to the Club for Growth function. And when you talk about elites in the Republican Party, right now, that's Club for Growth. Right now, that's also the Koch brothers, who are also joining in the effort to get behind a singular candidate to take Trump out. So, does it help DeSantis? Absolutely, because he's going to have access to money, and he's going to have, that whole, Club for Growth, Koch brothers network, behind him. So, obviously that's good for him if he's going to make a legit run at this thing. But I think it also helps Trump, because Trump's whole brand has always been against the elites, and he's never shied from saying yes within the Republican Party. So, he can tag DeSantis as a tool for the Republican elites, and he could go to his MAGA base and say, "See, they don't want you, and they're trying to stop you from this and that and the other." So it'll be interesting how that plays. That yes, DeSantis will have that network and the money that it brings behind him. But is that a positive, Bill, or is that a negative when you try to take out a guy whose brand right now is running against that group anyway?
Well, I don't think you're going to be surprised by my answer. The king of the hill is the king of the hill until he's not.
Yep.
So all of this stuff is hypothetical, but one can see a path for DeSantis. I think what DeSantis is doing is what he has to do in order to get past Trump. Somebody has to try, and they have to do a damn better site than the Republican field did last time, which there is somebody in the local Howard County blogiverse who said back in October of 2015 that the last two Republicans standing would be Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. and he was pretty prescient. But everybody tried to flatter Trump or imitate Trump last time, flatter Trump, ignore Trump. All of those strategies didn't work, nor will they work in 2024. But DeSantis is trying something that at least nobody else has, because Trump is now running from the front, which is to undercut and undermine Trump. So, will those conservatives and, will people like, will your garden variety Southern conservative or, MAGA member anywhere go and turn around and look at Trump as he's not really so much of a man of the people as he says. I
Hmm.
personally don't think that will work. And
Mm-mm.
I don't think there's enough people together in the rest of the Republican Party coalition to upend Trump at the end of the day. But I think that I think that it's a strategy worth trying. It's really anybody's only chance. And a very interesting sidebar came to mind as you were talking, Steve, which
Mhm.
I thought to myself, I was looking at that Republican field and I was like, Trump will name absolutely none of those people to be his running mate.
Oh, we already know where that's going.
Well, because they run against them. Well,
Right.
I'll be interested to see if you know where that's going, because I think I know who he's going to pick, and I'm ready to call it right now.
Go
He's
for it, Bill.
going to be Sarah Sanders.
Ooh, I did not have that one.
It's going to be Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She checks all the boxes. I mean,
Yeah.
a new governor, a new generational face. She would be formidable in the debate against the vice president. And she's loyal, incredibly, absurdly loyal. I mean, she left the White House on her own terms, so that she could run for governor of Arkansas. I think Sarah Sanders is. I think it's going to be Trump Sanders 24.
Huh? That's I didn't think about that one, but that one I could see happening. Just for the record, I had Kristi Noem. I don't think she's going to run for president. I don't think that there's any number out there that indicates that a presidential run is viable for the governor. She did go to CPAC, so she did go to the more MAGA friendly function, and she made her speech, and she didn't say anything ill of one Donald J. Trump. I think Trump likes her, and I think being a governor and having taken on some of the cultural issues she has taken on as governor, I think that that would be attractive. I know a lot of people are talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't see that one because I think Trump will look at Greene and say no.
Yeah,
Because Trump's not, he might be lost, gone, or crazy, but he's not dumb. And I think he would see that as let's say, even worse version of Sarah Palin. Giving oh, there you are. Hey, Bill.
I'm trying again. We'll see.
Um, I don't see Trump world going with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think they'll
No,
want more stature than that.
no, I don't either. And I will buy Kristi Noem if Kristi Noem decides that she's not going to run. But otherwise, he's not going to take any of his opponents again as his VP. It's just not his way.
Right.
And of course, I have to frame it in these terms because that's how I think this man thinks. I think he would pick Kristi Noem if she didn't run over Sarah Sanders. Honestly, because Kristi Noem is a more attractive woman, and I'm sorry to say that, but that Sarah Sanders is curvy,
Mm-hmm.
and I just don't think that we remember what Trump said about Carly Fiorina. We remember what he said about other women, and I don't know. I mean, picking Sarah Sanders would be about as woke as Donald Trump could possibly get. And I've never gone wrong on overestimating that man. That he would do the right thing. He always does the crude thing. So we shall see. There's a long way to go before we get to that speculation. However, Steve, the Democratic primary in 2024 has been joined with the announcement yesterday of 2020 candidate, author, self-help guru, and Oprah, and I think Gayle King's spiritual advisor,
Yeah.
Marianne Williamson, taking a second shot at the White House. Anything you want to share on that?
Speaking of Paul Begala's analysis and doing nothing but there's no upside, there's only downside. And it's funny, I watched because of the change in the Sunday morning schedule, excuse me, I watched Jonathan Capehart's show, and Marianne Williams was on with Jonathan, and he asked some questions and she had some answers that were, if you follow Marianne Williamson and some of the stuff she said in 2020, yeah, it's kind of the same vibe. But he did ask her, hey, look, would you endorse, the nominee, Joe Biden or somebody else? And she did not come out and say she would endorse Joe Biden, but she certainly was very strong in saying, I would do everything in my power to make sure that the Republican Party, which has become so radicalized, would not have their representative in the White House. So I guess you can call it an endorsement, non-endorsement. So I found that interesting, and you know, and you can see Jonathan Capehart in his interview. If he had a thought bubble, it would always be like, "What's your point here?" And there was nothing in that interview. I mean, she talked about a lot of issues and things that some of which were quite relevant, but there was nothing that made the case for why are you running against Joe Biden. I guess the only good thing I would say is, like last time, hopefully Ms. Williamson, excuse me, runs in the primary, and when it's over, doesn't go third party and create the scenario that we talked about earlier with Paul Begala. Run as a Democrat, do what you can there, and then if it doesn't work out, you back the nominee and go from there, and don't further muddy the water.
Yeah. I will tell you this, in that one debate, when she said that Trump is a incredible source of dark energy in our nation and in our world, she wasn't wrong.
No.
I have to be honest. I mean, I don't think she's qualified to be president. But I also have to admit that while I do love the Joe Biden drip, as the kids say nowadays, and it's the whole thing is he's running on competence and experience and expertise. Let the old guy run the show. I wish that there would be some air given to some of these next generational leaders, and I just don't mean the people like Pete and Kamala and Gina Raimondo, Marty Walsh and at the Department of Labor, who just kind of fall in line. But give some of these people who push the envelope a little bit of a thing. Where is a place for Andrew Yang to do anything? Where is a place for Marianne Williamson to do anything? I think that somebody like her could be deputized to help. Steve, you and I remember, again, me showing our age, the presidential physical fitness awards and those little patches we used to get for running the 600 in a certain amount or throwing a baseball a certain distance. Why not something about mental health? Why not something about mental wellness, about making sure that you take care of what is maybe the most vital organ in your body, your brain, and keeping your mind healthy. I mean, it may be a little new age wackadoodliness, but mental health is actually far from that. And meditating is far from that. We're talking mainstream practices here. And perhaps there's some value there for her. But in terms of being an actual candidate for president, no. Just don't see it.
I will say this, Bill, though, really quickly. I think Biden has done a good job of bringing the next generation into the fold as president. You mentioned some of the cabinet secretaries. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms was brought in. Some others. So my hope is, if there is a second Biden term, that he will start laying the groundwork for that next group to step onto center stage come 2028, because it'll be important to make sure that there is a name or names of people ready to pick up the mantle. So I hope he does that if there is a second term, to elevate some of those voices.
We'll see. And I mean, and I'm not saying that he hasn't. I'm just saying that those people Keisha Lance Bottoms, I would say, is another one in that same vein. More mainstream. I mean, people who are who think just a wee bit differently.
Ah, okay, gotcha.
You know, probably, you know, but then again, I mean, Beto hasn't been given anything, and it's a shame. Where's Stacey Abrams? What's she doing right now?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
how
Post,
come
post,
she should
post,
be head of the DNC, to be honest. Anyway, I
yeah,
digress.
yeah.
Steve, you want to follow up on our topic last week regarding the Howard County Library System as we go hyper local. There I go again with the face. Different camera, same face. Steve, what's the latest on this madness? Because I started reading up on this more this week, and brother, I don't know, man. I don't know. This stuff's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, it's gotten even crazier because now the county council, who the auditor does technically report to, so it's not like they're out of school with this thing, but they've gotten involved heavily, and it's once again showing within the Democratic caucus in our council, the separation there. Delegate Council Member Jones of District 2 decided that this report, I find it offensive, racially insensitive, the whole 9 yards. Mr. Glendenning, the auditor, has not stepped up to even answer questions about it. I think their approach has strictly been from the auditor's office. The report speaks for itself. We have no further comment. So, Councilmember Jones decided to put forward a motion to have the auditor effectively fired. And so put that before the council, and I believe it was in a closed session. And the vote was 3-2 against. Councilmember Jones was joined by Councilmember Rigby in supporting this motion to have Mr. Glendenning removed from his position. Democratic council members Deb Young, Liz Walsh voted no to the idea of removing him, as did Republican council member David Youngman. So again, within the Democratic caucus, even after the elections, we still have that 2-2 split. I guess that's the way that's going to be going forward on certainly a number of issues, certainly ones of this nature. And so the interesting thing is, obviously, besides Councilmember Youngman, who again is just, I won't get into party politics. We'll save that for another podcast. But the responses from the 4 council members, Councilmember Jones let it fly in a statement, and he really went all in. Councilmember Rigby, not as far, but she effectively said, I support Councilmember Jones. The responses from council members Walsh and Young felt straight out of the book of Susan Collins. They were very concerned. But they certainly weren't concerned enough to take any action. So I don't know where it goes from here now that it's clear that the council is not going to take action. At this point, I don't know where it should go, because the report is out, the auditor is going to remain, and I don't know what the conversation going further, especially some of the stuff I'm sure you're reading or seeing, and I am as well, out in the world of the cyberspace. I don't know what that's going to do besides just have people yelling at each other. So that's the latest bill. I don't know if you've picked up anything. I know you said you've started following and reading and getting some background. So your thoughts of where we are and where we go on that.
My thoughts of where we are is that, and where we go is that, 1, where we are, I hate it all. 2, we're not going to go to a good place. I'm just going to tell you right now, we are not going to go to a good place. I don't like what I'm seeing with the race card being thrown around. I just don't. I feel that we have some selective liberal outrage going on here. I feel that we are in danger of overreaching. And I feel that this is maybe in what's been a very relatively, I won't say relatively, very disciplined 5-year run by the Ball administration to not overstep. I think this is the first thing that I can point to that goes, I'm not sure Mr. and Mrs. Average Howard County is down with this. Do I believe that AKA should have been thrown under the microscope of the auditor's office because of having this event and the CEO of the library being an AKA and all of this? No, I really don't. And in terms of, well, we want to see if there's any impropriety because the CEO of the library is an AKA. I would say, okay, then do enough to cover your ass, do enough to check the boxes and then be done with it. But more was done. And, people came from the auditor's office, came to this event to see what was going on. And that's ridiculous. Nobody, whether they're AKA, Delta Sigma Theta, Alpha Phi Alpha, which I mentioned because that happens to be the brotherhood of both County Executive Ball and Council Member Jones.
Edo, by the way, the brother affiliate of AKA. So AKA and AFIA are partners. So
Truth. The Howard County Bird Watchers Club, the Master Gardeners, the Howard Astronomical League, Parents Without Partners, interest group for forming a professional skee ball team that's based out of Howard County. None of those organizations, which means any of those organizations, should have a member of the county auditor's office showing up at their event. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. Is it enough to call for firing the auditor? Possibly. Is it enough to call for the firing of the auditor based on racist grounds? I think we got to be better than that. I think there's enough there in the and based in fact that could call for desiring to see him removed. And I'm not sure if he exists at the county. I mean, I don't know offhand. I believe he exists at the pleasure of the county executive.
County, he actually exists
at the county council, right?
He exists at which is why the council took that vote, because he operates at the pleasure of the county council.
That's right. I'm sorry, I should have known that.
Right.
But now that he's in, he's in.
Yeah.
So I don't like that we're going there. There's plenty on the basis of fact to urge his removal. And the two council members who voted to remove him are affiliated and are connected with more than enough organizations who could put pressure on him if they wanted to. And of course, we know the county council members and state legislators do that. They call their friends who run organizations and they say, oh, by the way, if you want your group funded in the next budget, you're going to appear at this hearing and you're going to say you want this dude out. That's what happens. So people are going to say I'm not a real Democrat for saying this. Fuck them. I'm more of a Democrat than pretty much any of those jerks who say I'm not a real Democrat. I'm not a Democrat who kisses ass. I'm not a Democrat who's going to be blindly obedient to a leader. I'm a leader in my own right, and I want to be respected as a leader. I don't deal with this groupthink bullshit that's going on in the Howard County Democrats for the last 6 or 7 years. It's crap. So I believe that probably the auditor should freshen up his resume and find himself someplace else to be. And I think he should be thanked for his hard work and his service to the county and wished well in his future endeavors. But I think the way that the county is going about doing this is risking doing more harm than good.
Yeah, and I would agree, Bill. I think clearly there were some things done on the part of the auditor's office that you have to say were improper. Staking out an event, um, that's just way too far. The report and some of the descriptions of the individuals going into the event, I don't see what that has to do anything whatsoever with whether or not there was financial improprieties going on there. So certainly there were ways where the auditor's office went wrong both in their investigation and in their report. And I don't think that Mr. Glendenning nor his office are helping their cause with their silence. I mean, it's very easy in this world and in this day and age to find your way to a microphone, put in a call to the Baltimore Sun, and say, "Hey, I want to comment on this situation," or some other local or state paper. I don't know how the county council process went. I know they went to a closed session to discuss this. I don't know if they had the auditor in front of them to ask questions of him before they took this vote. I don't know what that. Again, it was a closed session, so I don't know what that process looks like or looked like. But certainly the auditor is not helping himself nor his office by basically refusing to comment beyond the report. That's not helping. And I think that would go a long way towards determining whether or not, to your point, Bill, the auditor should step down. I mean, there certainly is enough there to ask that question based on the investigation and the report generated without getting into a conversation about race. I would agree with you there. I think there's certainly enough material there to have made that or put that motion forward without the rest of it.
Yeah, race is the convenient hot button, and this is what the jerks who advise our lead elected officials politically want to do, is keep hitting that hot button.
Yeah.
And keep hitting it until it breaks. It's getting ready to break.
Right.
And I think we have at least one more election cycle, 24, of Republican wackiness.
Yeah.
But look out, because 26 is going to be a different ballgame. And I'm already hearing the name of Opal Jones as at the top of the list of prospective county executive candidates. And this is not the first time that Councilmember Jones has played the race card as saying why somebody doesn't do something that he does something that he doesn't agree with. So you got to be careful. You got to be really careful. Has Craig Glendenning helped himself with his stubbornness? No.
Nope.
Is there something there that maybe we all don't know about? Who knows? Maybe. But this ain't the way to do this. We're better than this in Howard County. We better shape up and start acting better than this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree, because I think that unless there was something in that report, and I've seen the report, and there's nothing in there that would make me say, "Oh my God, Craig Glendenning is a racist," or has engaged in racist dialogue. I've not seen that. What I've seen is there's certainly the potential that the auditor's office and the auditor himself overstepped their bounds. I think it is very clear they overstepped their bounds. I don't know where they got this quote unquote, tip or where they got this information from. I don't care where they got it from. I think whoever provided that certainly had ulterior motives of whether it was going after the library system or Ms. Akins or AKA. I don't know who they were after, but these anonymous tips don't come in by accident. But I think it's up to the auditor's office to say, okay, we have this thing, let's look into it, but do it the right way as opposed to what they went about.
I'm going to say this and then I'm going to say this and I'm going to shut up. The county auditor's office violated the civil rights of each and every person who attended that event. Plain and simple.
Yes.
There's no two ways about it. And maybe some of this is the county auditor playing a little cover his butt lest somebody sue for having their civil rights violated.
Right.
which I consider would be a next step to this, and an appropriate step that doesn't play the race card.
Right.
But to just sit there and say he did something that was unwoke,
Right.
can't do that. Be
Right.
a little bit more higher level. We have systems in place in the law and in regulation to handle these sorts of situations. Let's let that happen.
Yep.
Steve, we're at the end of another fine podcast production. I'm feeling good about the universe. How are you?
Well, it like you said, it's March, so obviously I've switched over to baseball. Obviously, we're into spring training. We have the World Baseball Classic coming up, which I'm really excited about because I think there's some pretty stacked teams there going after that championship. So yeah, it's that time of the year where everything is coming up and coming in green. So very excited about our upcoming podcast, and we've got some really good guests coming in starting next week. So I'm really excited about that. And hey, we're getting into the silly season, so let's have some fun with it.
Every season is a silly season, Steve. And Steve alluded to something that I will announce. Next week, we have a guest. Howard County four-term Register of Wills Byron McFarland will join us for what's always a rousing amount of conversation. And Steve, I believe Byron will be the first member. And since we're ending the podcast in May, we have the 5 appearance club. Byron will be well, I believe he will be at least the 3rd member of the 3 appearance club, which it's been cut from 5 to 3.
Right.
So we have Kirsten Coombs, Len Foxwell, and Byron McFarland will be the 3rd member of our 3 appearance club.
Nice.
That's pretty good.
That's really good. And Byron, last time we had a great conversation, not just about some of the issues involved in his office, but he's a long time Politico in the county, in the state. So I know he'll have a lot to say about what we just talked about with the library system and how the council is going about handling it, along with some other things out of the elections of 2022. So yeah, Byron is an interesting cat. So I'm looking forward to another conversation with him.
Hoping to get a few more members of that 3 appearance club before we pitch to 10.
Yeah.
So with that, we bring another edition of Forward Maryland to the close. For Steve, I'm Bill. Join us next week for another amazing edition of Forward Maryland. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.